It was a once in a lifetime encounter at the ocean. I cannot even, there are no words to describe what we saw. By the end of this video, you're going to have a jaw dropping moment when you see what my husband and I and our scientist son observed in the wild. This was something I have wanted to see my entire life. But we're also going to talk about what I overheard on the seashore and how this is fertile ground for homeschool. So let me go ahead and share my screen so that you can actually see. Let me make it a full screen for you for a second. Okay. I've waited my entire life to see whales in the wild. Now, I'm just going to pull this close. So this pod of orcas, we got to the ocean and we parked our car and we started to walk, and somebody said, if you hurry, you will see the orcas. They've been there for a while. So we didn't hurry. We just sauntered down because we've heard this before and we've missed them, except once or twice where you could see a fluke from way far away. But we got to this place where the orcas came within, and I will show you the video at the end. It's worth hanging to the end. These beautiful creatures came within 15 feet of where we were standing on the shore. It was both incredible and terrifying at the same moment. If you were brave or not so smart, you could have actually jumped and touched the whales. But so you were fighting that incredible, oh my goodness, they're right there. And this terrifying feeling of, oh my gosh, they're right there. Are they going to come up and get us? So they swam by and we watched them roll and jump and stick their tails in the air. And it was a fantastic experience. So stick to the end and I will show you the very short video. But while we were standing there, and when you listen to the video, you'll hear him at the end, you'll hear, how is that even possible? There were two young boys playing at the ocean while all the parents were like jaw dropped watching these orcas. The parents would go, oh, and the kids would look up and the whales would be gone. Like they kept playing in the sand and missing what was going on in the ocean. Super funny. But this one little kid he had what I would call a mischievous curiosity. He was all over the place and he would look at his mom and he would say, but you promised, and oh, don't you want to do, like he had just this mischievous about him, playfulness, not deceitful, but just like, hey, we came to the ocean, you promised every time we come to the ocean you would get wet. So here he is playing. The first thing that I witnessed was his hesitancy to get in the water. He was wearing long, like fleece pants. And so his mom encouraged him, hey, take those off so you can get wet. You have shorts on underneath. And he's like, bingo. So now he's in his swimwear, right? We live in Washington and our water is cold and it's been chilly the last week or so. So the idea of getting in the water is sometimes a little bit overwhelming. But there he gets his toes in the water. And as I'm watching, he finds a piece of driftwood. It's about 5 or 6 feet long, and he plays with it floating. And then he tries to sit on it. And he's just laughing because he's sinking. He's like, whoop, getting wet, getting wet. Over time, he starts to add more and more pieces of driftwood to create his own raft. Beautiful. Okay. Science in motion. No curriculum. Nobody standing in front of him. Let's talk about sink and float. Let's learn about buoyancy. Just natural curiosity right there on the seashore. It was fantastic. Enter in a second little boy, younger, who's like, hey, my name's so-and-so. And he's like, hey, so obvious, younger, older. These kids were like 6, 7, and 8, 9, like in that age frame. And I start to hear this interaction. Do you want to be friends? He's like, well, I already have a best friend. You hear that doubt and hesitancy already in there. And he's like, what grade are you in? He's like, 3rd. He's like, what grade are you in? Doesn't answer. What grade are you in? Doesn't answer. What grade are you in? He's like, 2nd. He's like, no. They go back and forth. These strangers on the beach. And then they start sizing each other up. This little kid goes, I think you have an IQ of 2. Big kid's head gets really big. He's like, I do not. He's like, I do. I think you have an IQ of 2. They start to battle back and forth. Well, do you know 362? Do you know 1600, 900? They start throwing numbers at each other. And then he's like, I bet you don't know Roman numerals. He's like, I know Roman numerals, I, V, X. Like they start going, they start sizing each other up. So there's this in there. It's a character development, attitudes, heart conditions, this kind of stuff. And then the last thing that I heard is the older kid say to the mom, can we go home? Can you help me take a shower? And so all of this stuff happening on the seashore. So what's going on here? First of all, a once in a lifetime encounter. Now, I was talking to a homeschool mom inside our coaching community, and we were talking about the truth that quality time, quality moments happen inside of quantity moments. You have to invest the time going exploring, hanging out with your family, just chilling on the seashore in order to be at the right place at the right time to see and rescue a starfish, to see sand dollars, to see a bloom of jellyfish, or in this case, to gobsmack see a pod of orcas. Is unbelievable. So when it comes to homeschool, put in the work, put in the time to let yourself have permission to not be chained to your kitchen table. Go out and hang out with your family. Where that, whatever that means to you. It could be the local botanical gardens. It could be going to the museum every time they change their exhibits. It could be, for us, it's the ocean. We love to go to the seashore, and we take note of tides and boats and seaplanes and critters. There's always seal to watch where we live, and there are always some kind of creatures to be discovered, whether they're sand dollars or starfish or moon snails or jellyfish or orcas. Incredible. So get out and about with your family and go to the same places over and over and over again so that you can see how things change over time and take note of things like, what are the weather conditions? What are the plants like on Tuesday in April versus Tuesday in May versus Tuesday in June? A really great movie to watch with your kids is My Octopus Teacher. It does have the content of this struggling with suicide. So just know that there's that mature content talked about. But this man goes on this adventure to kind of just reboot his life, where he free dives in the same place day after day after day. And he is discovered by this little octopus, and just this journey of how they become intertwined in each other's lives. It's beautiful. But that's what happens when you go to the same places. You look at the brook and you see that yesterday it was dry, but today it's overflowing. You go to the park and you see that tree wasn't down on the ground yesterday. I wonder what happened. So get out and about with your family and invest in quantity time so that you can take advantage of quality moments. What happened on the beach was we had a once in a lifetime encounter, and we saw so much behavior with this marine mammal that, as a homeschooler, especially if my kids were younger, we would have taken this experience and turned it into a unit study on orcas. And we know that where we live, that there are two kinds of orca pods. There are resident orcas and there are transient orcas. One of them hunts seal and the other one doesn't. And we're still doing the research to figure out which pod this was, what type of orca this was. Beautiful. We saw adults with juveniles. We saw juveniles playing and spinning their tails in the air. We saw breaching of whales. We saw rolling. At one point, we had been there for about an hour, and suddenly the big orcas, the mama and the daddy, take off. Like, you could see them put their jetpacks on, and we're like, whoa. They had been close enough that we were mesmerized, but suddenly they're darting towards the shore, way, way down, like far away, but not far away. They were still like incredibly close. And we see them, and we had recently seen a seal pop his head up, and we're like, uh-oh, are we about to witness a National Geographic moment? I don't know. It's like crazy. And then they turn and they come right in front of us. 15, I'm not joking, 15 feet away. It was incredible. So you can take an experience like that and you can turn it into a day-long, week-long, month-long, or year-long study of something that captivates you and your kids. But the other things that unfolded there on the beach are things that I want to encourage you to do as you are homeschooling your own kids. And that is to have your listening ears on and your observation eyes on. So you're taking note of what's happening. What are your kids doing? What are they interacting with? What are they experimenting with? What kinds of conversations are they having? And are there any nuggets in there that as a homeschooler you should lean into? For instance, at the beach, the little boy, the older boy, was experimenting with buoyancy. And he just put a piece of wood in the water. I don't think he really expected anything. I think he was just throwing a big stick in the water, but then it floated. And he's like, I wonder if I can float with that stick. And then he started to add wood to it to make it buoyant enough that he could actually sit on it. Brilliant. This is science in its raw state. It was beautiful. You could very easily, carefully turn this into a science unit on buoyancy. There's so much out there, and you don't want to just like come home and pop open the textbook, but you could say things like, I noticed when we were at the beach, you were experimenting with how much wood it would take so that you could float. What made you think of that? And just have that conversation. So science. The critical thing that I heard were the character development things. There was this juxtaposition of, can we be friends? Well, and it's okay. I already have my own best friend. Like this whole, like, how do you make friends in public? And these two boys, they were young, but one was awkward in that you could tell he was anxious. Like, I want to be friends with you, but gosh, if I already have my defense in place in case you say no. So he's like, I already have a best friend. The other kid was so absorbed in his science experiment that he was only half listening to this little kid, right? And 2 years younger than him. But they had this then chest bumpy moment where it was like, well, I bet you don't know this, and I bet you don't know that. And they started to go back and forth, like measuring their knowledge against each other. This is, to me, a symptom of not understanding that everybody is learning different things at different times, and we can learn from each other. But it also made me stop and think, okay, third grade, Roman numerals. That's a fun thing, especially if you're watching a movie like Hercules, the old Disney Hercules, and he says, somebody call IXII. You know that they're saying call 911. So that's fun. But in modern world, so you can wrestle with Roman numerals. When should my kids learn Roman numerals? Should I spend a long time on it, or should we just touch it and then move on? The reality is that when kids are young, you can teach big things and they don't even need to totally understand what the concepts are. Like, you can teach all the Roman numerals just flashcard style so that they have it in their mind. So then when they get older, when they're working on things like outlines or doing timestamps on movies that they're producing, they will understand how to use, or at least know that those Roman numerals are there. But interesting to hear them chest bump and they pull out math. This is just fun to listen to that. But you could turn that into then character role play practice at home. Hey, I noticed that when somebody approached you on the beach, you were so into what it was you were doing that you didn't give them their full attention. Let's practice that. So the next time a younger child comes to you, you can validate their existence because you missed a big moment where you could be a mentor to a younger kid, and you could just do 5 minutes of role play so that they're set up for success the next time. The other thing that I noted was that this young child was asking for help to take a shower. Now, I'm confident that this family was vacationing and staying at a vacation rental. So it could have been for a million reasons, right? He was old enough to handle showering on his own, sort of. But he could have been in a place where he didn't know how to use the shower or how to go from getting in there to leaving a bathroom dry all to himself. But there was this, okay, the life skill of being able to do self-care is something that we don't want to neglect. And we can certainly start empowering our kids to take care of themselves, personal hygiene from a young age, where we coach them. You know, the first step is that you do this. So you do that on your own, and then mom or dad will come in and help you with the next step. Okay, now you're ready for step 2. So do step 1 and 2, and then we'll come in and we'll help you with steps 3 through 9. And you equip your child in whatever that life skill is. So a lot happened when we were on the beach. It was fantastic. And I would love to hear where you are in homeschool. Do you take the time to pause and listen to what your kids are saying? And then to take note of it, you don't need to jump in and rescue them, right? You don't need to say, hey, if you add more wood, you'll float. Let them problem solve that on their own. But then you can circle back later. So what do you think about observing kids in the wild, experimenting with things, and then coming back and sprinkling a little bit of magic on it to bring it to life? That's something that I can help you do if you need help doing that kind of thing. But also paying attention to what your kids are doing and saying, especially when they're around other people. It's not usually a good time to parent and correct your kids in public unless they're harming somebody. Then you want to just kind of get in there and resolve situations so that nobody gets hurt. But it's better to take note of the things that they're saying and the things that they're doing, and then to design and implement role playing over the next few days so that you can mentor them in how they should have responded so that they're set up for success the next time. And paying attention to where they are as far as their development so that you are empowering them to do those incredibly important life skills so that they can flourish and thrive on their own. So wonderful lessons from this once in a lifetime encounter. But let me go ahead and now, as we close, share this incredible encounter that we had at the ocean. So ready? You're about to be amazed. And yes, you will hear me gasp. And if you're paying attention, you'll hear the older boy say, how is this even possible? Are you ready?
Oh my gosh. Oh.
So there's more to that video. I'll link to the full video below. It's only a couple minutes long, but watch it the first time to be gobsmacked, amazed about the whales and what an incredible experience it was. Watch it again, and you'll hear the 2 young boys in the background that I talked about when you talk about science experiments and character development and life skills. So the core nugget to carry away from this is, number one, if you need help, please reach out, because this is what makes my heart beat faster, is to empower homeschoolers like you to educate their kids by leaning into life, love, and laughter. But number two, just delight with your kids. Get out there, explore, and don't be afraid to go back to the same things over and over and over again, because you never know when you're going to see something like a pod of whales in the wild.